still remember the exact moment I realized family could be your greatest strength, or your deepest wound. The boardroom fell silent as I signed the final acquisition papers. $28 million. My hands didn't even tremble. The attorneys exchanged glances, clearly impressed by my composure. None of them knew I'd cried myself to sleep the night before, clutching my grandfather's pocket watch, wondering if he'd be proud of me. None of them knew that exactly 2 weeks earlier, at our mother's birthday dinner, my sister had casually mentioned to everyone present that I was obviously adopted because I didn't look like a real Harrison. Hi, I'm Maya. I'm 34, a financial strategist with an MBA from Wharton, and apparently, I don't look like I belong in my own family, at least according to my sister, Vanessa. Growing up as the darker-skinned daughter in a predominantly white family wasn't always easy. I inherited my grandfather's rich melanin and curly hair, the only one in my immediate family who did. My grandfather, my hero, had built a small empire from nothing, married my grandmother, who was white, and raised my mother to believe character mattered more than appearance. Unfortunately, that lesson seemed to skip a generation when it came to my sister. I never thought Vanessa's occasional jokes about my appearance would evolve into something ugly. We shared a childhood, parents, even a bedroom for 14 years. But somewhere along the way, while I was building my career and making my grandfather proud, Vanessa was building resentment. Let me back up a bit. My grandfather, James Harrison, founded Harrison Media Group in the 80s. It started as a small local marketing agency and grew into a respected regional media company. When he passed away 5 years ago, he left me his collection of rare books, his antique pocket watch, and a sealed letter. Inside was a detailed investment strategy and a note that read, "Maya, you have my eyes, my heart, and my mind for business. I've watched you. You're ready. Make something of this." Attached was documentation for a trust fund I never knew existed. Not a fortune, but enough to start something if I was smart about it. I took his advice, made some strategic investments, and recently, after years of careful planning, managed to acquire the now struggling Harrison Media Group from its current owners, distant cousins who had run it into the ground after my grandfather's business partner bought him out decades ago. No one in my family knew what I was doing. Not my parents, who had moved to Arizona after retirement. Certainly not Vanessa, who had spent the last 10 years working as a mid-level marketing executive while complaining about being underappreciated. Which brings me back to that dinner, 2 weeks before the acquisition. Mom had wanted a family gathering for her birthday. Dad grilled steaks on the patio of their retirement home while Vanessa's husband chased their twin boys around the yard. Everything was normal until it wasn't. "Mom, remember that ancestry test I did?" Vanessa said casually, sipping her third glass of wine. "I got the results back. We're like super European. Mostly English and German. That's what we always thought," Mom replied, not really paying attention. "Yeah, which is why it's so obvious Maya must be adopted," Vanessa continued, her voice light but her eyes fixed on me. "I mean, look at her. She doesn't look like a real Harrison." The conversation stopped. Dad nearly dropped the spatula. Mom's smile became fixed. "Vanessa, that's enough," Dad said sharply. "What? I'm just saying what everyone thinks," she laughed. "It's not like it's a secret. I mean, Maya knows she doesn't look like us. Right, Maya?" I sat there, fork suspended halfway to my mouth, feeling every pair of eyes on me. I'd dealt with variations of this my entire life, from schoolyard taunts to awkward questions from strangers about my real parents. But hearing it from Vanessa at our mother's birthday dinner hit differently. "I look exactly like Grandpa James," I said quietly. "You know that?" Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, that old photo is so faded you can barely tell. Besides, he wasn't even fully black. You're much darker." "Vanessa," Mom snapped, "that is completely inappropriate. Apologize to your sister." But the damage was done. Vanessa offered a half-hearted, "Sorry if you're offended," and the conversation shifted. But I felt the familiar ache spreading through my chest. The one I hadn't felt since middle school when a classmate had asked why I didn't match my family. I left early that night, claiming a work emergency. No one questioned it. I was known for my dedication to my career. As I drove home, I thought about Grandpa James, about his stories of being the only one in rooms full of white businessmen, about how he'd squeeze my hand and whisper, "Remember, Maya, they'll underestimate you twice, once for your color, once for your gender. That's your advantage. Let them." I hadn't told anyone about the acquisition because I wanted it to be perfect before I revealed it. Harrison Media Group had been my grandfather's pride, and watching distant relatives run it into the ground had been painful. I'd spent 5 years planning this moment, working with investors, saving every penny, building my reputation in financial circles until I could make my move. The next morning, Vanessa texted as if nothing had happened. Brunch this weekend. The twins missed their auntie. I didn't respond. Instead, I focused on finalizing the acquisition details. The current owners were eager to sell. They'd mismanaged the company badly, and it was hemorrhaging money. They had no idea I had a comprehensive revival plan already mapped out. 2 weeks passed. I signed the papers. Harrison Media Group was mine. I hadn't planned to tell my family immediately, but that evening, as I sat in my new office, my grandfather's old office in fact, my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Hey sis, weird question. Are you involved with the Harrison Media Group acquisition?" Janice in HR just called me freaking out about new management. Janice. I remembered her. She'd been with the company since Grandpa's days and was one of the few remaining employees who remembered him. She would have recognized my name instantly. I didn't respond to the text. Instead, I went home, poured myself a glass of wine, and tried to process the emotions swirling through me. Pride in what I'd accomplished, lingering hurt from Vanessa's comments, uncertainty about how to proceed. The next morning, my phone showed 6 missed calls from Vanessa. As I was reviewing them, it rang again. "Maya, finally, why haven't you been answering?" Vanessa's voice had that familiar blend of demand and charm she'd perfected over the years. "I've been busy," I replied coolly. "Did you buy Harrison Media Group? Like, Grandpa's old company?" "Why didn't you tell me? This is huge!" I took a deep breath. "Yes, I did. The acquisition was finalized yesterday." "Oh my God, that's amazing. We need to celebrate. Wait till Mom and Dad hear—" "I haven't told them yet," I interrupted. "I was planning to do that myself." Of course, she backpedaled. "But Maya, this is so exciting." You know, I've been feeling so stuck at Marshall Marketing. The management there just doesn't appreciate talent, you know? And now that you're running Harrison, well, I've been thinking it might be time for a change. There it was. I closed my eyes. "Are you asking me for a job, Vanessa?" "Well, not just any job," she laughed nervously. "I mean, I have 10 years of experience in the industry. I'm thinking director of marketing, at least. We could work together, the Harrison sisters, taking the company back to its glory days. Doesn't that sound perfect?" I thought about all the times Vanessa had competed with me growing up, how she'd take credit for my ideas, minimize my achievements, make subtle comments about my appearance. I thought about the dinner 2 weeks ago, the casual cruelty in her voice when she suggested I wasn't really part of the family, and now she wanted to work for me, with me, as if nothing had happened. "I need to think about it," I said finally. "The company's in rough shape. I'm still assessing staffing needs." Of course, she said quickly. "But you'll consider it, right? I mean, we're sisters. Family comes first. Family comes first." The irony wasn't lost on me. "I'll think about it," I repeated. "I need to go. I have a meeting." I hung up before she could respond. Sitting at my kitchen table, I pulled out my grandfather's pocket watch and ran my thumb over the engraved initials, JDH, James Daniel Harrison. "What would you do, Grandpa?" I whispered. As if in answer, my phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Janice in HR, a subject line, "Welcome home." I opened it to find a scanned photo I'd never seen before. My grandfather standing proudly outside the original Harrison Media Group office, arm around a young black woman who had to be his mother, my great-grandmother. They had the same eyes. My eyes. The message read simply, "Your grandfather always said a Harrison would come home to set things right. He meant you. He knew." Tears blurred my vision as pieces clicked into place. My grandfather had prepared me for this moment, not just with the trust fund, but with all those quiet conversations about business, about resilience, about knowing your worth. The decision about Vanessa would have to be made. The company needed rebuilding. My family would have questions. But in that moment, sitting in my kitchen with a piece of my history I'd never seen before, I felt something settle inside me. A certainty that I was exactly where I was supposed to be, looking exactly as I was supposed to look. I was a Harrison, through and through. And now I had the chance to prove it, not just to my sister, but to myself. The next morning, I arrived at Harrison Media Group headquarters an hour before anyone else. I wanted to feel the space, to walk the halls where my grandfather had built his legacy. The building had seen better days. The lobby furniture was worn, the once vibrant company logo on the wall had faded, and there was a distinctive smell of neglect that successful businesses never have. Still, beneath the disrepair, I could sense the bones of something solid, something worth saving. I unlocked my grandfather's old office, my office now, and stood in the doorway. The previous executives had replaced most of the original furniture, but they'd kept his desk. Solid mahogany, imposing yet elegant, with intricate carvings along the edges. I ran my fingers over the smooth surface, wondering how many contracts had been signed here, how many handshakes had sealed important deals. He used to polish it himself every Friday afternoon. I turned to find Janice standing in the doorway, 2 coffee cups in hand. In her 60s now, she had the kind of face that wore its years proudly, laugh lines around her eyes, silver hair cropped short and stylish. No matter how busy he was, she continued, handing me a cup, Mr. Harrison would roll up his sleeves at 4 p.m. sharp and spend 30 minutes with a cloth and some lemon oil, buffing this desk until it gleamed. Said it reminded him where he came from. I accepted the coffee gratefully. Where did he come from, Janice? I know the broad strokes, but he didn't talk about it much, she said, settling into a chair across from me. Started with nothing, built something, the usual American dream narrative, but it wasn't that simple. Your great-grandmother, the woman in that photo I sent you, she cleaned houses for wealthy white families, saved every penny so your grandfather could attend college. He was the first in his family. I nodded, absorbing this piece of my history. Thank you for the photo. I'd never seen it before. I thought as much. Your grandfather kept it here rather than at home. Said it reminded him what he was working for. She paused, studying me. You have his eyes, you know, not just the color, the way they see things. My sister would disagree, I said before I could stop myself. Janice raised an eyebrow but didn't comment directly. The staff meeting is at 9:30. Most don't know about the change in ownership yet. They're nervous. There have been rumors about layoffs for months. Are they warranted? The layoffs? She sighed. The company's been mismanaged for years. Your cousins treated it like a cash cow, milking it dry without investing back. Good people have left. Those who stayed are overworked and underpaid. She fixed me with a direct stare. They need leadership, Ms. Harrison, real leadership. Please call me Maya. She smiled. Your grandfather insisted on formality at the office, said it maintained professional boundaries. Well, I'm not my grandfather. No, she agreed, standing up. You're what he was working toward. Something better. She headed to the door. Staff meeting, 9:30, don't be late. First impressions matter. As she left, my phone buzzed. Vanessa again. Hey sis, just checking in about that position we discussed. The twins have a recital next week, but I could start right after. Maybe director of client relations instead of marketing. More prestigious. I placed the phone face down on the desk without responding. I had a company to resurrect first. The staff meeting was tense. 32 employees, all that remained of what had once been a staff of over 100, gathered in the conference room, eyeing me with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. I recognized the look from countless boardrooms where I'd been the only woman of color. The silent assessment. Who is she? Why is she here? Is she qualified? Good morning, I began, standing at the head of the table. My name is Maya Harrison. As of yesterday, I am the new owner and CEO of Harrison Media Group. A murmur rippled through the room. I caught snippets. Harrison, related to the founder. Who is she? Yes, James Harrison was my grandfather, I continued, addressing the unasked question. Many of you may not know that the company left family ownership decades ago when my grandfather's partner bought him out. Yesterday, I acquired it back. Why? The question came from a man in his 40s, arms crossed defensively over his chest. Company's been circling the drain for years. Why buy a sinking ship? I met his gaze directly. Because this ship was built to weather any storm. The hull is sound. The problem has been the navigation. I looked around the room. I've spent the past month reviewing the company's financials, client roster, and employee records. I know exactly where we stand, and I have a clear vision for where we're going. For the next 40 minutes, I outlined my revival plan. Phase 1, stabilization, pay off the most pressing debts, secure existing clients, and evaluate personnel. Phase 2, rebuilding. Invest in new technology, refocus on core competencies, rebuild the client base. Phase 3. Expansion. As I spoke, I could see the shift in the room, skepticism giving way to cautious hope. By the time I opened the floor for questions, the energy had transformed. Will there be layoffs? Someone asked, the question everyone had been thinking. I won't lie to you. Some positions may become redundant as we restructure, but my goal is to build, not dismantle. Before any decisions are made, every employee will have the opportunity to demonstrate their value to the company going forward. The questions continued, about pay, benefits, clients, strategy. I answered each one directly and honestly. By the meeting's end, the tension had lifted somewhat. As the staff filed out, Janice approached with a small group. Maya, these are your department heads. They've been holding the company together with duct tape and determination. I spent the rest of the morning in one-on-one meetings with each department head, assessing their competence, commitment, and vision. Most impressed me with their resilience in the face of poor leadership. A few seemed burnt out beyond recovery. By late afternoon, I had a clearer picture of what I was working with. The company wasn't just financially troubled. Its culture had been poisoned by years of mismanagement. Restoring faith would be as important as restoring profitability. As I was reviewing personnel files, my assistant, inherited from the previous regime and clearly still evaluating me, knocked on my door. Ms. Harrison, there's a Vanessa Collins here to see you. She says she's your sister. I closed my eyes briefly. Of course Vanessa wouldn't wait for an invitation. Send her in, please. Moments later, Vanessa swept into my office like she owned it. Designer purse swinging from her arm, hair perfectly styled, smile bright and confident. Maya, this place is amazing. I mean, it needs updating, obviously, but the potential. She glanced around, taking in the worn carpet and outdated decor. We could really make this shine. What are you doing here, Vanessa? I asked, not bothering to stand. I thought we could discuss my position over lunch. She dropped gracefully into the chair opposite my desk. I've been thinking. Director of Client Relations is underselling my experience. What about Chief Marketing Officer? I've practically been doing that job at Marshall for years, just without the title or compensation. I studied my sister carefully. Her expression was eager, expectant. The same look she'd had as a child when she wanted something. It had always worked on our parents. Vanessa, I haven't made any decisions about executive positions yet. I'm still evaluating the current team. Her smile dimmed slightly. But I'm family, Maya. I thought that would count for something. It does, I replied carefully. It means I hold you to an even higher standard. She leaned forward, suddenly serious. Look, I know what you're thinking. That comment at Mom's dinner, it was just a stupid joke. I'd had a few glasses of wine. You know how it is. You're not still upset about that, are you? The casual dismissal of her cruelty was so typical that I almost laughed. Instead, I kept my expression neutral. This isn't about that comment, Vanessa. This is about business. Harrison Media Group needs the right people in the right positions to survive. I'm not making any hiring decisions based on personal relationships. Her face hardened slightly. I see. So all those years I supported your career, introduced you to my contacts, cheered you on, that doesn't count for anything? I raised an eyebrow. When exactly did you do any of that? Oh, please, she scoffed. Who told you about the Wainwright account when you were starting out? That was my connection. The connection you only shared because Mom insisted, I reminded her. And even then, you introduced me as your little sister who's trying to break into finance, rather than as a qualified professional. Vanessa waved her hand dismissively. You're being oversensitive. That's always been your problem. I inhaled deeply, counting to 5 before responding. I have a company to turn around, Vanessa. 32 employees depending on me to make the right decisions for their livelihoods. I can't and won't make hiring decisions based on family ties. So you're saying no? Her voice had taken on the dangerous edge I recognized from childhood, the precursor to one of her emotional outbursts. I'm saying not right now. If you want to be considered for a position here, you can submit your resume and portfolio like any other candidate when we begin actively hiring. She stood abruptly, face flushed. You know what? Everyone was right about you. You've always thought you were better than the rest of us. Just because Grandpa James favored you? He didn't favor me, I interrupted. He mentored me because I showed interest in his business. You were invited to every conversation, every weekend at his office. You chose not to participate. Because it was boring. sitting around talking about market shares and profit margins while the rest of us were having fun by the pool. She grabbed her purse. "You know what? Forget it. I don't need your charity job. I was trying to help you, but clearly you're determined to do this alone." As she stormed toward the door, she turned for a parting shot. "Just remember, Maya, when this place fails under your leadership, and it will, don't come crying to the family you're so quick to dismiss." The door slammed behind her, and I exhaled slowly, feeling the familiar mix of anger, hurt, and resignation that interactions with Vanessa typically left me with. My assistant peeked in cautiously. "Everything okay, Ms. Harrison?" "Fine, thank you." I straightened my posture. "Could you ask Janice to come see me, please, and bring the client files for our top 10 accounts from the last 5 years?" The afternoon passed in a blur of spreadsheets, client histories, and frank discussions with Janice about which employees were worth fighting for and which were beyond redemption. By evening, I had the outline of a battle plan. As I was packing up to leave, my phone rang. "Mom." "Maya, is it true? Did you buy Grandpa's company?" I sighed. "Yes, Mom. I was going to tell you and Dad this weekend. Vanessa just called, very upset. She said you humiliated her when she offered to help you run the company." "Of course she had." "That's not what happened, Mom. She says you refused to even consider her for a position. After all her experience in marketing, she was only trying to help, dear." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Mom, I just acquired a struggling company. I'm not making any hiring decisions based on family connections. But she's your sister." The familiar refrain, the one that had followed me throughout childhood whenever Vanessa and I had conflicts, "She's your sister. Be the bigger person. You know how sensitive she is." "Yes, and this is my company. My responsibility. If Vanessa wants a position here, she can apply like anyone else when we're ready to expand the team." Mom was silent for a moment. "You know, Maya, I've never understood this rivalry between you two. Families should support each other." "I agree completely," I said, my patience wearing thin. "And which is why I expected support for my business decision rather than pressure to hire my sister regardless of qualifications or timing." "That's not fair, Maya. We're very proud of what you've accomplished. It's just, Vanessa is going through a difficult time. Bradley's company is downsizing, and with the twins, private school tuition. The unspoken expectation hung in the air that I should set aside sound business judgment to solve my sister's financial concerns. It was so predictable that I almost felt sorry for my mother, caught as always between Vanessa's demands and my boundaries. "Mom, I love you, but I need to handle this my way. Harrison Media Group isn't a family charity. It's a business with real people's livelihoods at stake." "I understand," she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "Your father and I are just concerned that this business venture might be creating unnecessary tension in the family." Translation: Vanessa is making our lives difficult with her complaints, and we wish you would give in to keep the peace. "I appreciate your concern," I said carefully, "but this is important to me. I'm honoring Grandpa's legacy by rebuilding what he created. I hope you and Dad can understand that." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my office, my grandfather's office, and felt the weight of what I'd undertaken. Not just rescuing a failing company, but standing firm in my own value in a family that had often seemed determined to minimize it. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Hope you're happy. Mom's upset now. You always have to make everything so difficult." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the bottom drawer of the desk where Janice had mentioned my grandfather kept personal items. Inside was an old leather-bound ledger, its pages yellowed with age. Opening it carefully, I found entries in my grandfather's distinctive handwriting, not business accounts, but personal reflections. A journal of sorts. I turned to a random page from 30 years ago. "Board meeting went poorly. Simmons suggested selling to Westbrook Media, said a company like ours has limited appeal beyond certain demographics." The implication was clear. When I objected, he had the audacity to suggest I was too emotional about the business, as if passion is a liability rather than the very thing that built HMG from nothing. Reminder to self, never apologize for protecting what you've built. The moment you start compromising your vision to make others comfortable is the moment you begin to lose everything. I traced my fingers over his words, feeling a connection across time and beyond blood. My grandfather hadn't just left me financial resources. He'd left a blueprint for standing firm when it mattered most. As I locked up the office and headed to my car, I felt my resolve strengthen. Harrison Media Group would rise again, not because of family connections, but despite the complications they sometimes brought. And in the process, perhaps I would finally find my own voice, one that couldn't be dismissed or diminished by Vanessa's cutting remarks or my parents' reflexive peacekeeping. The journey would be difficult. Already, family dynamics were threatening to distract from the real work ahead. But as I drove home in the gathering darkness, I made a promise to myself and to my grandfather's memory. I would rebuild his legacy with the same determination that had created it in the first place. And maybe, just maybe, I would rebuild myself in the process. 3 weeks after the acquisition, I was drowning in spreadsheets and possibility. Harrison Media Group was simultaneously worse and better than I'd initially assessed. Worse financially, I discovered hidden debts during our deeper audit, but better in terms of untapped potential. We still had clients who'd stuck with us through years of decline out of loyalty to my grandfather's legacy. That loyalty was something I could leverage. I'd been working 16-hour days, arriving before dawn and leaving long after dark. My apartment had become little more than a place to shower and catch a few hours of restless sleep. This morning, I'd arrived at 5 a.m. to find Janice already there, reviewing personnel files. "You need to pace yourself," she said without looking up. "Your grandfather worked himself into an early grave. I won't watch history repeat itself." I set my coffee down on the conference room table. "I'm fine." "You're exhausted," she countered, "and making decisions from a place of exhaustion is dangerous." She wasn't wrong. Just yesterday, I'd snapped at our head of accounts over a minor reporting error, something I would normally have handled with more grace. "I don't have the luxury of slowing down," I admitted. "The bank is reviewing our loan application next week. If we don't secure that capital infusion..." Janice finally looked up. "Then we'll face that challenge when it comes. But running yourself into the ground won't help this company. Take the weekend off. The work will be here Monday." I started to protest, but she held up a hand. "That wasn't a suggestion, Maya. It was the kind of advice your grandfather paid me to give him, whether he wanted to hear it or not." That made me smile despite myself. "Did he listen?" "Rarely," she admitted. "But when he did, he made better decisions." She gathered her papers and stood. "Go home at a reasonable hour today. Sleep. Remember what sunlight looks like." I promised I would try, though we both knew it was unlikely. As she left, my phone rang. "Dad?" "Maya," he said when I answered. "Your mother and I are in town. We'd like to see you and your new company." My heart sank. I wasn't ready for this, not with everything still in the early stages of rebuilding, and certainly not with the Vanessa situation still simmering. "Dad, this isn't a great time." "It never is, with you," he said, but his tone was gentle rather than accusatory. "We're only in town for the weekend. We're staying at the Westbrook Hotel. Dinner tonight. Your choice of restaurant." I closed my eyes, weighing my options. Perhaps it was better to face this now rather than postpone the inevitable. "Okay. There's a small Italian place near the office. Maggiano's. 7 o'clock? Perfect. We'll see you then." As I hung up, my assistant knocked on the door. "Ms. Harrison? The team from Decker Advertising is here for the pitch meeting." I straightened my blazer and pushed personal concerns aside. Business first. The Decker meeting went unexpectedly well. They were a mid-sized agency looking to rebrand, and our proposal, emphasizing Harrison Media Group's legacy of innovation combined with forward-thinking digital strategies, seemed to resonate. By the meeting's end, we had a tentative agreement for what would be our largest new client since I'd taken over. "Well done," said Marcus Chen, our creative director, as the Decker team left. "If we land them, it changes everything." "When we land them," I corrected, "I want a full implementation plan by Tuesday. Show me how we deliver exceptional value from day one." He nodded, a new energy in his movements. This was what the company had been missing: direction, purpose, the belief that excellence was still possible. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and decisions. At 6:30 p.m., Janice appeared in my doorway. "Didn't I tell you to leave at a reasonable hour?" I glanced at my watch and winced. "I'm having dinner with my parents. They're in town." Her expression softened. "Ah, first time seeing them since the acquisition." I nodded, gathering my things. "First time since Vanessa's. Comments at Mom's birthday, actually. Want some advice from someone who watched your grandfather navigate family dynamics for 30 years? Please, own your success without apology. Your grandfather made that mistake early on. always justifying his decisions, always trying to make everyone comfortable with his achievement. It took years before he realized that some people will never be comfortable with your success, no matter how you present it. I considered her words as I drove to the restaurant, mentally preparing for what was sure to be a complicated dinner. My parents had never been overtly unsupportive, but they'd never quite understood my drive either. In their world, work was something you did to fund the life you wanted, not a calling or passion in itself. They were already seated when I arrived. My mother elegant as always in a simple blue dress, my father distinguished in a sport coat and crisp shirt. They stood to embrace me, and for a moment, we were just a family reuniting after time apart. "You look tired," Mom said immediately, examining my face with concern. "I'm fine. It's been a busy few weeks." Dad nodded approvingly. "Building a business is demanding work. Your grandfather used to say the first year separates the dreamers from the doers." We ordered drinks, and I felt myself beginning to relax slightly. Perhaps this wouldn't be the interrogation I'd feared. "So," Mom said after the waiter departed, "tell us everything. How did this happen? Buying Grandpa's company after all these years?" I gave them the condensed version, the trust fund, the strategic investments, the opportunity to acquire Harrison Media Group when its value had dropped. I didn't mention the years of planning, the nights spent studying market trends, the quiet determination that had driven me since the day I'd read my grandfather's letter. "It's remarkable," Dad said when I finished. "I had no idea you'd been planning something like this." "I wasn't sure it would work out," I admitted. "I didn't want to talk about it until it was done." "But why didn't you tell us after?" Mom pressed. "We had to hear it from Vanessa, and only because she was upset about—" She trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. "About me not giving her an executive position despite her lack of qualifications." I finished dryly. Dad shifted in his seat. "Amaya, we're not here to get involved in whatever is going on between you and your sister. We just want to understand." Our food arrived, providing a momentary respite from the conversation. I used the time to gather my thoughts. "The company needs a complete overhaul," I explained as we began eating. "I'm not making any hiring decisions based on personal relationships. Every position needs to be filled by the most qualified person available." "Of course," Mom said quickly. "That makes perfect sense. But surely there's some role Vanessa could fill. She has been in marketing for 10 years. And there it was, the familiar pattern. My achievements acknowledged, then immediately redirected to how they could benefit Vanessa. "Mom, Harrison Media Group is fighting for survival. Every hire I make needs to strengthen the company, not satisfy family expectations." "We understand that," Dad interjected. "It's just, well, your sister's been going through a tough time. Bradley's company is downsizing, and she's worried about job security. When she heard you'd acquired a media company, it seemed like perfect timing." I set down my fork. Perfect for whom? Not for the company. Not for the existing employees whose livelihoods depend on me making sound business decisions. Mom's expression tightened slightly. "Family helps family, Maya. That's all we're saying." "I agree completely," I replied. "Which is why I expect my family to support my efforts to rebuild Grandpa's legacy, rather than treating it as a safety net for Vanessa's career concerns." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. I could see the familiar conflict on my parents' faces, the desire to support me warring with the reflexive need to smooth Vanessa's path. Dad cleared his throat. "We're proud of you, Maya. What you've accomplished is extraordinary. We just hope it doesn't come at the cost of your relationship with your sister. A relationship that includes her telling everyone at Mom's birthday that I must be adopted because I don't look like a real Harrison." The words came out sharper than I intended. Mom flinched. "She didn't mean it that way. You know how Vanessa gets when she's had a few drinks? She says thoughtless things." "She meant exactly what she said," I countered. "It wasn't the first time, just the first time she said it in front of all of you." They exchanged a glance, and I could see they were genuinely surprised. Had they really been so oblivious to the undercurrent of Vanessa's comments over the years? "And what do you mean, not the first time?" Dad asked slowly. I took a deep breath. This wasn't how I'd planned to spend the evening, but perhaps it was time for some honesty. Vanessa has made comments about my appearance, about how I don't match the family since we were teenagers. Little digs here and there. Introducing me to her friends with qualifiers about how I'm adopted, or how I take after distant relatives. Jokes about me being the mailman's daughter. It's been consistent for years. My mother's face had gone pale. Why didn't you ever say anything? I did, Mom, multiple times. You always told me I was being too sensitive, that Vanessa didn't mean anything by it. I had no idea it was so persistent, she said quietly. Maybe you didn't want to know, I suggested, not unkindly. It was easier to dismiss it as sisterly teasing than to confront the reality. Dad looked deeply troubled. Maya, I'm sorry. We should have paid more attention. The simple acknowledgement was unexpectedly affecting. I blinked back sudden tears, nodding my acceptance of his apology. It's not just about the comments, I continued, feeling a damn break inside me. It's about the pattern. Vanessa says or does something hurtful. I react. And somehow I end up being positioned as the problem. Too sensitive, too serious, not understanding her humor. And now she wants me to give her an executive position at the company I've worked years to acquire. And when I don't immediately agree, I'm the bad guy again. My parents were silent, absorbing my words. Finally, Mom reached across the table and took my hand. We've failed you, she said simply, both by not seeing what was happening and by contributing to the pattern. I'm sorry, Maya. Her admission left me momentarily speechless. In all our years of navigating Vanessa's behavior, my mother had never so clearly acknowledged her role in enabling it. I don't want to drive a wedge in the family, I said after a moment. I just want to run my company based on merit, not obligation. And I want the same respect for my decisions that you'd give any other business owner. Dad nodded slowly. That's fair. More than fair. The rest of dinner passed more comfortably. They asked about my plans for the company, and this time, they listened without immediately connecting it to Vanessa's situation. When we parted outside the restaurant, their hugs felt different, more seeing somehow. We really are proud of you, Dad said as they prepared to leave. Your grandfather would be too. The next morning, I took Janice's advice and stayed home, allowing myself a rare Saturday to simply exist without spreadsheets or strategy meetings. I was drinking coffee on my balcony when my phone rang. Vanessa. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but after last night's conversation with my parents, I decided to answer. Hello, Vanessa. Mom and Dad said they had dinner with you last night, she said without preamble. Did you spend the whole time complaining about me? I sighed, already regretting my decision. No, Vanessa. We talked about the company, mostly. They seemed weird when I called this morning. Dad asked if I've been making comments about your appearance. Where would he get that idea if not from you? Maybe because you told everyone at Mom's birthday that I must be adopted because I don't look like a real Harrison, I suggested mildly. She made a dismissive sound. That was just a joke, Maya. God, you're so sensitive. There it was again. The familiar deflection, the repositioning of me as the problem for reacting to her behavior rather than her as the problem for the behavior itself. What do you want, Vanessa? She paused, apparently thrown by my direct question. I want to know why you're turning Mom and Dad against me. I'm not doing anything of the sort. I simply told them the truth, that I'm building a company based on merit, not family obligation, and that your comments about my appearance over the years have been hurtful, not humorous. So dramatic, she scoffed. A few jokes about how you got the brown jeans while I got the Campbell ones, and suddenly I'm the villain. I closed my eyes, counting to 10 before responding. Vanessa, I have neither the time nor the energy for this circular conversation. If you have something substantive to discuss, I'm listening. Otherwise, I'd like to enjoy my Saturday. Fine, she snapped. I heard you might be landing the Decker account. Bradley knows their CFO from golf. I could help smooth that relationship. And there it was, the real reason for the call. Not reconciliation or understanding, but another angle to insert herself into my business. Thank you for the offer, but we have the Decker situation well in hand. You're really determined to shut me out, aren't you? Her voice had taken on the wounded tone that usually preceded either tears or rage. After everything I've done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Vanessa? I asked, genuinely curious about her perception. I've always been there for you. I introduced you to people. I included you in things. When? I pressed. Give me a specific example of when you used your connections or influence to help my career rather than expecting the reverse. The silence on the line was telling. That's what I thought, I said quietly. Look, Vanessa, I'm not trying to hurt you or exclude you, but I won't compromise my company's future to satisfy your expectations. That's not fair to me or to the employees counting on me to make sound decisions. You've changed, she said accusingly. Success has made you cold. No, I countered. Success has given me the confidence to establish boundaries I should have set long ago. After we hung up, I sat staring at the city skyline, feeling strangely lighter despite the difficult conversation. For years, I'd contorted myself to fit Vanessa's narrative, the overly sensitive younger sister who needed to lighten up, who should be grateful for any crumbs of inclusion. Now I was writing my own story, and while it might cause temporary friction, the liberation was worth it. Monday morning brought both promise and pressure. The bank had requested additional documentation for our loan application, the Decker contract was still being finalized, and 3 of our remaining legacy clients had requested meetings to discuss the future direction of the company. Corporate speak for, convince us not to leave. I was reviewing the latest draft of our revival plan when Janice knocked on my door, her expression unusually grave. Maya, there's something you need to see. She handed me her tablet, open to a business news site. The headline made my blood run cold. Family feud at Harrison Media Group. New CEO faces resistance from within. The article, citing sources close to the company, detailed how I had pushed out experienced executives to install my own team, how I was struggling to maintain client relationships, and how my lack of media experience was causing concern among stakeholders. It specifically mentioned that I had rejected qualified family members who offered assistance, framing it as arrogance rather than sound business judgment. Most damning was a quote from Vanessa Collins, sister of CEO Maya Harrison and an experienced marketing executive, expressing grave concerns about the direction of the company and suggesting that family loyalty has been sacrificed for personal control. I set the tablet down carefully, aware that Janice was watching my reaction. Well, I said finally, I suppose we know where Vanessa stands now. This kind of hit piece could damage our negotiations with the bank, Janice warned, and possibly the Decker contract. I'm aware, I took a deep breath, centering myself. Get the team together. We need to develop a response strategy. The morning devolved into crisis management. We drafted a statement emphasizing our forward momentum, arranged calls with nervous clients, and I personally contacted our bank representative to provide context for the article. By afternoon, we had contained the immediate damage, but the article had achieved its purpose, creating doubt about my leadership just as we were trying to secure crucial financing. I was reviewing our contingency options when my assistant buzzed, "Ms. Harrison, there's a Bradley Collins here to see you. Says he's your brother-in-law, Vanessa's husband. This day just kept getting better. Send him in." Bradley entered hesitantly, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. We'd never been close. He was Vanessa's husband, and that relationship had defined our interactions over the years. "Maya," he greeted me, remaining standing even when I gestured toward a chair. "I'm sorry to drop in unannounced. What can I do for you, Bradley?" He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "It's about Vanessa. That article. She didn't authorize those quotes." I raised an eyebrow. "She wasn't interviewed?" "No, she was," he admitted. But the reporter twisted her words, took things out of context. "She's upset about it. Upset enough to call me and explain, to issue a correction." He looked away. She feels caught in the middle. She was just expressing some concerns, and the reporter made it sound like an attack. I studied him carefully. Bradley had always been Vanessa's staunch defender, but something in his demeanor suggested this visit wasn't entirely her idea. "Why are you really here, Bradley?" He sighed, finally sitting down. "Things aren't good, Maya. My company is cutting positions, including mine. We've been living beyond our means for years. The house, the private schools, the vacations. Vanessa's salary at Marshall Marketing isn't enough to maintain our lifestyle." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said cautiously, "but I don't see how that's connected to Harrison Media Group." "She's desperate," he said simply. "When she heard you'd acquired this company, she saw it as a lifeline. When you didn't offer her a position, it felt like rejection at the worst possible time. That doesn't justify undermining my company in the press?" "No, it doesn't," he agreed, surprising me. "That's why I'm here. To apologize on her behalf and to ask, not for a job, but for time. She needs to adjust to our new reality, and lashing out at you is her way of avoiding that adjustment." His candor was unexpected. In all the years I'd known Bradley, he'd never spoken about Vanessa with anything but admiration and defense. "I appreciate your honesty," I said carefully, "but the damage is done. That article could cost us crucial financing. He nodded, looking genuinely regretful. I know, and I'm sorry. For what it's worth, I've always respected your drive, Maya. The way you built your career on your own terms. Vanessa sees that too, though she'd never admit it. After Bradley left, I sat at my grandfather's desk, turning his pocket watch over in my hands. The situation was complicated beyond business now. Vanessa's attack had both personal and professional implications, and my response would shape not just the company's future, but our family dynamics for years to come. I opened the drawer where I'd found my grandfather's journal and pulled it out, searching for wisdom across time. I found an entry from the year he'd been forced to sell his stake in the company. The hardest decisions aren't between right and wrong. Those are easy. The hardest are between right and right. When compassion and justice compete, when personal loyalty clashes with professional integrity. In those moments, the only guide is this: which choice honors not just who you are, but who you're striving to become? The question resonated deeply. Who was I striving to become? The answer had never been clearer. Someone who built rather than destroyed, who led with integrity even when it was difficult, who honored both her heritage and her vision for the future. With sudden clarity, I knew what I needed to do, not just about Vanessa's attack, but about the larger challenge of saving Harrison Media Group. I picked up the phone and dialed Janice's extension, gathered the executive team. I have a new strategy to discuss. By evening, we had developed what I called our Heritage Revival Plan, a bold approach that would honor my grandfather's vision while updating it for the modern media landscape. Instead of trying to be everything to everyone, we would focus on what Harrison Media Group had originally done best, telling authentic stories for diverse audiences. The centerpiece would be a campaign showcasing our own story: the founding by James Harrison, the decades of success, the decline under distant ownership, and now the return to family stewardship with a renewed commitment to excellence. We would address the family drama head-on, positioning it as part of our authentic journey rather than hiding from it. Transparency rather than damage control. As for Vanessa, that required a more personal touch. I left the office early for the first time since the acquisition and drove to my parents' hotel. They were surprised to see me, but welcomed me into their suite. I need your help, I said simply. Not with the company, but with Vanessa. They exchanged glances, clearly wary of being caught in the middle again. What kind of help? Dad asked cautiously. I need you to be honest with her in a way I can't be. About the impact of her behavior, about the reality of her situation. I took a deep breath. And I need you to deliver a message from me. What message? Mom asked. That despite everything, despite the hurtful comments over the years, and this attack in the press, I'm willing to help her, but on terms that respect both of us. Not an executive position she's not qualified for, but assistance finding appropriate opportunities, financial planning help if they need it during this transition. Dad nodded slowly. That's very generous, considering. It's not about generosity, I explained. It's about breaking a destructive pattern. For both of us. As I drove home that night, I felt a strange peace settling over me. The challenges ahead remained daunting. The bank loan still uncertain, the Decker contract not yet finalized, Vanessa's reaction to my offer unknown. But for the first time since this journey began, I was moving forward as my complete self, not just as a businesswoman or a granddaughter or a sister, but as Maya Harrison, embracing all aspects of my identity and heritage. The road ahead would not be easy. Family wounds heal slowly, if at all. Business revivals face setbacks and doubters. But as I approached my apartment building, I caught sight of my reflection in the glass doors. My grandfather's eyes looking back at me, filled with a determination that transcended blood and appearance. I was a Harrison, through and through. And Harrisons, as my grandfather's journal reminded me, did not build lasting legacies by taking the easy path, but by having the courage to forge new ones when necessary. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. For tonight, that knowledge was enough. 3 months after the media attack, I stood in the newly renovated lobby of Harrison Media Group, watching as workers installed our reimagined company logo, the original design my grandfather had created, now updated with modern elements that honored both our history and future. The transformation wasn't just cosmetic. It reflected the company's remarkable turnaround. The bank loan had come through, though at higher interest than we'd hoped. The Decker contract had been signed, bringing 5 other clients in its wake. Our Heritage Revival campaign had generated industry buzz, positioning us as the authentic voice in a sea of corporate media sameness. Most surprisingly, the article Vanessa had sparked became a turning point rather than a setback. By addressing it openly, acknowledging the family dynamics at play while showcasing our professional approach, we'd demonstrated transparency that resonated with clients tired of corporate doublespeak. "It looks right," Janice said, appearing beside me. "Like it belongs here again." I nodded. "How are the quarterly projections looking?" "We're still in the red, but less deeply than forecasted. Another 2 quarters and we might actually see profit." "My grandfather always said the sweetest victories are the ones you have to fight for," I replied. "Speaking of fighting," Janice glanced toward the entrance. "Your sister's here." My stomach tightened. I hadn't seen Vanessa since before the article, though we'd exchanged terse texts following my conversation with our parents. According to Mom, she'd initially rejected my offer of appropriate help, calling it condescending. But 3 weeks ago, she'd reached out asking to meet. I'd been postponing, unsure if I was ready. Apparently, she'd decided to force the issue. She looked different, less polished, more authentic somehow. Her designer handbag was gone, replaced by a simple leather tote. Her hair, usually perfectly styled, was pulled back in a casual ponytail. "Maya," she said as I approached. "Thank you for seeing me. You didn't exactly give me a choice," I observed, but without heat. "Would you like to come up to my office?" Once we were seated in the privacy of my grandfather's office, the awkwardness between us became palpable. Vanessa glanced around, taking in the changes I'd made, the vintage photos of our grandfather I'd framed, including the one with our great-grandmother that Janice had sent me. "You've done amazing things here," she said finally. "Dad showed me the press coverage." "Thank you," I replied, waiting for whatever had brought her here. She took a deep breath. "I came to apologize for the article, for what I said at Mom's birthday, for a lot of things, actually." I remained silent, giving her space to continue. "Bradley and I are selling the house," she said, looking down at her hands. "Downsizing to something we can actually afford. The twins are starting public school next month. How are they handling the changes?" "Better than me, honestly." She attempted a smile. "Kids are resilient. I'm the one having identity crises over losing status symbols." Her self-awareness was surprising and, I had to admit, refreshing. "What about work?" I asked. "Are you still at Marshall?" She shook her head. "I resigned last week. It wasn't the right fit anymore. I was coasting, not growing." I nodded, understanding that feeling all too well. "Maya, I need to tell you something," she continued, meeting my eyes directly. "I've been in therapy since everything happened, trying to understand why I've treated you the way I have all these years." "And what have you discovered?" I asked quietly. "That I've been jealous," she admitted, the words seeming to cost her. "Not of your appearance or your success, but of your certainty. You've always known who you are, what you want. I've been defining myself by external validation, the right husband, house, job title." She glanced at the photo of our grandfather. "And I was jealous of your relationship with Grandpa James, the way he mentored you, believed in you. I told myself I wasn't interested in business, but the truth is, I was afraid I wouldn't measure up." Her honesty left me momentarily speechless. In all our years as sisters, I'd never heard Vanessa speak with such raw vulnerability. "The comments about you being adopted or not looking like a real Harrison, they were never about your appearance," she continued. "They were about me trying to claim something exclusive for myself. If you weren't a real Harrison, then I was the only one. The true heir to his legacy." I absorbed her words, feeling decades of hurt and confusion shift into a new context. Not healed, that would take time, but understood in a way that made healing possible. "I don't expect forgiveness," Vanessa said when I remained silent, "or a job for that matter. I just wanted you to know that I see what I did and I'm sorry." "Thank you," I said simply. "That means more than you know." We talked for another hour, really talked, perhaps for the first time as adults, about her fears for the future, my challenges with the company, our shared childhood memories, both good and difficult. Not everything was resolved, but a foundation was laid for something new. As she prepared to leave, Vanessa paused by the door. "That offer you made about helping me find appropriate opportunities, is that still open?" "It is," I confirmed, "but with one condition. Whatever we find has to be based on your actual skills and interests, not on what you think you should be doing." She nodded, understanding. "I'd like that." 6 months later, Harrison Media Group celebrated its first profitable quarter with a small gathering for employees and key clients. The company wasn't fully recovered yet, but the trajectory was clear, upward and sustainable. Vanessa attended as my guest, not as an employee. She'd found a position with a nonprofit focusing on media literacy for underprivileged youth, work that utilized her communication skills while fulfilling her newly discovered desire for meaningful impact. Our relationship remained a work in progress. Some wounds heal slowly, and patterns established over decades don't disappear overnight. But we were trying, both of us, to build something authentic rather than performative. As I stood addressing the gathered crowd, I caught sight of Janice in the back, giving me an approving nod. Beside her was a newly installed portrait of my grandfather. His confident smile and steady gaze captured perfectly. Harrison Media Group was founded on a simple principle, I told the audience, that authentic stories matter, that diverse voices deserve to be heard, and that integrity is not negotiable. Today, as we celebrate this milestone, we recommit to those values, not just as business practices, but as a legacy worth preserving. Later, alone in my office, I took out my grandfather's pocket watch and journal, these tangible connections to a man who had shaped my life in ways both seen and unseen. I added my own entry to his journal, not at the end, but as a continuation of an ongoing conversation across time. The true inheritance was never the money or even the company. It was the courage to stand in my own truth, the wisdom to know when to fight and when to reconcile, and the understanding that family, like business, requires both boundaries and bridges. The journey continues, but now I walk it knowing exactly who I am, Maya Harrison, my grandfather's granddaughter, my own woman, exactly as I was meant to be.